Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Somali famine spreads to more regions. Libya's Islamists deny forging an alliance with Gaddafi. And Israel approves 900 new settlement units in East Jerusalem. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
French Foreign Minister Alain Juppé has described the decree issued by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad authorizing political parties as an act of provocation that comes amid the violence against civilians. Meanwhile, all water, electricity, and communication services have been cut off in the city of Hama. Heavy gunfire was reported in various neighborhoods in the city, especially in the south. Several buildings were damaged in the Asi neighborhood in central Hama, where army and security forces have been deployed. Residents have told BBC that more than 40 people were killed or wounded yesterday.
The storming of the city of Hama, the deployment of dozens of tanks there, and the shelling of its neighborhoods by rockets and heavy gunfire. All of these have brought back the memory of the 1982 incidents, particularly the campaign of killing and crackdowns. Hama, which has become one of the largest areas witnessing anti-regime protests over the past 5 months, was once again invaded by security forces. Some witnesses confirm that what is happening today in Hama is far worse than what happened in the 1980s. The dead bodies scattered on the streets are an indication that a massacre has taken place in the city.
They are indiscriminately shelling homes.
Hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles are besieging various cities, including Deir ez-Zor, Homs, and al-Salmiya. The Syrian authorities have cut off communication services in several areas, as cited by human rights organizations.
A massacre is taking place right now in the city of Hama. A criminal incursion has been carried out in the city. They are shelling the area of southern Al-Malab and the Manakh neighborhood. Columns of smoke can be seen across the city. There have been confirmed reports that the residents have been prevented from fleeing the city by security forces and army checkpoints. Communication services have been cut off in various areas near the city of Hama.
Meanwhile, day and night, demonstrations and strikes have continued in several Syrian cities in solidarity with Hama and Deir ez-Zor and other besieged towns and cities. Protest rallies also took place in parts of the city of Aleppo. Funeral processions were held for the fallen residents who were killed by security forces in the so-called shabeha, following Ramadan's Tarwiyah prayers.
We wish that the incidents in Hama hadn't taken place. We hope that the army withdraws from the cities and opens an immediate national dialogue.
Syrian official media outlets have accused what they refer to as armed terrorist groups of terrorizing the citizens of Hama and Deir ez-Zor. They accuse the armed groups of spreading false information in a bid to distort the army's image and stir strife. They also accuse them of stirring corruption in the country, saying such actions violate Islamic principles and social ethics.
The incidents are repeating themselves while Arabs remain idly silent.
The opposition's websites continue to show images of protests, saying they have been captured from the scene of the events. They also continue to release videotaped announcements attributed to a group called the Free Officers Movement.
This is a statement issued by the Free Officers Movement. This is statement number 4 to the noble and free people of Syria.
The situation is very tense in Syria because the army is very strong and well attached to the regime. It will be very difficult to dismantle because of its social structure. It will take the people a very long time before being able to get rid of the regime and enjoy democracy.
It seems that the Tarwiyah prayers have become an event after which to gather and launch protest rallies. Some activists on Facebook have called for holding daily protests during the month of Ramadan. Ayan Yaqub, BBC.
At the international level, the UN Security Council has called for an immediate end to all violence and urges all sides to act with the utmost restraint and to refrain from reprisals, including attacks against state institutions. The Security Council is expected to meet next week to discuss the crisis again.
We express our profound regret for the deaths of hundreds of citizens. The Security Council condemns the widespread violations of human rights and the use of force against civilians by the Syrian authorities. The Security Council calls for an immediate end to all acts of violence and urges all sides to act with utmost restraint and to refrain from reprisals, including attacks against state institutions.
On the
northern Lebanese border in the Wadi Khalid region, Syrian forces heavily opened fire on the village of Hunayder, which led a number of terrified residents to flee. The gunfire caused damage to the house of a citizen by the name of Ahmed al-Ali.
A number of shabeha from Hezbollah's government assaulted a group of independent Lebanese activists and journalists in front of the Syrian embassy in Beirut. This is a reminder of the era of the Syrian mandate over Lebanon. Omar Harb reports.
The shabeha in the heart of Beirut. The enemies of freedom went from attacking Syrian citizens in Homs, Hama, Damascus, and Dara to assaulting Lebanese activists on Al-Hamra Street. They came with batons and knives and attacked people standing in front of the Syrian embassy in solidarity with the Syrian people. This led a number of activists to be admitted to Beirut's hospitals in serious conditions.
We were surprised by a number of people making phone calls. They are either embassy employees or it's security in civilian clothes. Then, a little while later, we saw a group of about 50 people coming towards us from both sides of Al-Maqdisi Street, the street behind Al-Hamra. They were carrying pictures of Bashar al-Assad and the Syrian flag. They took out sticks and knives and attacked us. During the attack, chairs, stones, and glass bottles were thrown at us. A Syrian embassy car chased a young man and woman to a restaurant on Hamra Street and assaulted them inside the restaurant.
After the attack, the shabeha of the Syrian embassy chased the young men and women down the streets and into the restaurants of Hamra to beat them.
We are independent young men and women with no affiliation to any political or religious group in the country. We gathered to protest in front of the Syrian embassy in solidarity with the Syrian people. We were standing and suddenly these guys walked up to us and one of them punched me in the eye.
The attack on civil activists generated a reaction from the head of the National Struggle Front and Member of Parliament Walid Jumblat. He stressed the right to protest and preserve freedom of speech. He indicated that turning several streets in the capital and areas in Beirut into security zones will not benefit anyone.
There is an implicit agreement among all Lebanese groups that this is a pluralistic country, that this is the country of freedom and democracy in the Arab world. It is important to improve these freedoms. We denounce any behavior or aggression on anyone, regardless of their political opinion. We took a stand on the events of August 7th, and even before then, during the era of Emil Lahoud, we also had a position. So the question of freedom is a sacred issue. We are in favor of using these weapons against the Israeli enemy, but against using these weapons or threatening to use them inside the country.
Jumblat also called for respecting media outlets. He reminded those he referred to as certain ministerial figures that freedom of press is as important as political and general freedoms.
صرح رئيس نيكاراغوا دانيال أورتيغا إثر اجتماعه مع وفد الليبي أن العقيد معمر القذافي.
Nicaragua's President Daniel Ortega said after the meeting with the Libyan delegation that Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi is ready to hold elections to solve the crisis in the country. Ortega said the Latin American bloc supports the move that would allow Libyans to exercise their right to vote and create the conditions needed to end the war. The Nicaraguan president also called on NATO to end its airstrikes against Libya. Meanwhile, an Islamist leader in Libya denied reaching an agreement with the Gaddafi family, as announced by Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi. Ali Salabi described the statement by the colonel's son as a lie that seeks to create a crack in the national accord. In a related development, a group of revolutionaries demanded the dismissal of some transitional council members in light of the assassination of their military commander Abdel Fattah Yunus.
Seesaw battles between the revolutionaries and Gaddafi's forces continue to dominate the Libyan scene as the revolutionaries announce additional gains, which are quickly contradicted by the regime. The latest claim was the revolutionaries' announcement of an advance to the center of the town of Zliten, situated 150 kilometers east of Tripoli. The claim was denied by Libyan government spokesman Musa Ibrahim, who confirmed that Zliten is still under their complete control and condemned what he described as the revolutionaries' lies.
Of course, as usual, they made the same pathetic NATO-covered advance towards Zliten, but they were hit back by our armed forces and were forced to return to Misrata after incurring great losses. Zliten is a free city under our full control.
على صعيد آخر أعلن سيف الإسلام القذافي أن أسرته توصلت إلى اتفاق.
In another development, Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi announced his family reached an agreement with what he described as the Islamist opposition to get rid of the secular opposition demanding his father's resignation. Saif al-Islam said he negotiated with Ali al-Salabi, an Islamist leader in eastern Libya. He considered the Islamists to be the real force on the ground and called on the West to recognize them. Meanwhile, al-Salabi confirmed talks were held with Gaddafi, the son, but did not confirm reaching an agreement. The repercussions of the assassination of the revolutionaries' military commander, Abdel Fattah Yunus, continue to be felt in Benghazi. Libyan organizations participating in the revolution against the Gaddafi regime called for the dismissal of some transitional council members over General Yunus's assassination. The February 17th coalition demanded the termination of Ali al-Issawi, who is in charge of the Transitional Council's foreign affairs. Ali al-Issawi signed the request to arrest General Yunus. The coalition also demanded the termination of Judge Joma Jazawi al-Abaidi, who summoned Yunus for questioning.
ودعا الائتلاف إلى إجراء تحقيق كامل ومستقل مع الاثنين لتحديد الدور.
The coalition called for holding a full and independent investigation with both members to specify the role they played in General Yunus's arrest, which coincided with heated battles against forces loyal to al-Gaddafi. The coalition also asked for the dismissal of Defense Minister Jalal al-Digali and his deputy Fawzi Bukatif, who left the country after learning of General Yunus's arrest. The Obeidat tribe, to which Yunus belonged, said it will seek justice on its own, placing the Transitional Council in a difficult position. The Council's image has been shaken inside the country, despite the fact that international powers rushed to recognize it.
Somalis fleeing from the south of their country continue to flock to refugee camps in Kenya in search of food and shelter. Meanwhile, more regions in Somalia are hit by the wave of drought that has resulted in the famine in southern Somalia.
Officials in charge of the refugee camps are facing difficulties in containing the incremental number of Somalis, as northern and eastern parts of Kenya are also suffering from the drought that is sweeping across the Horn of Africa region.
These people were destined for a new era. With the rampant famine ravaging their country, these thin Somalis fled for survival, hoping to find something in their neighboring country, Kenya, to end their hunger. Reports say that Kenya, which is hosting the Somali refugees in Dadaab refugee camp, is also suffering from a disastrous drought, threatening many of its regions.
I think there's a bit of exaggeration.
I think there's a bit of exaggeration because over the last few months, we distributed a massive amount of food and we adopted a large budget to alleviate the impact of the drought. However, with the refugees coming from Somalia, the matter becomes more complicated. I believe that we are doing all that we can.
Nearly 2,000 Somalis are flowing to refugee camps in Ethiopia and Kenya every day, escaping from hunger and war. Dab refugee camp is the most well-known among these camps and is packed with refugees. This adds obstacles to the Kenyan government's efforts to help its countrymen, especially those under the age of 6.
We are not struggling, we are doing, but of course we are saying we may also need help.
Of course, we also need help because the malnutrition rates are very high. We ask the international community to provide aid to end the situation. We need food with high nutrition values for the malnourished children.
Malnutrition leads to disastrous results. The story about a mother who watched her children die one after another was only one of many. The number of destitute people in the Horn of Africa is increasing. But unless the international community intensifies its help to contain the crisis, the coming days are looking very ominous.
Rights group Amnesty International says 2 women jailed for taking part in anti-regime protests in Bahrain are on a hunger strike. Amnesty International says the head of the Bahrain's Nursing Society and deputy head of Bahrain Teachers Association have been tortured in detention. The London-based group also says the 2 have been held in a state prison near the capital Manama for several months. The rights group says the women have started their hunger strikes in an attempt to protest their imprisonments. From Afghanistan, where 4 American troops have been killed in the eastern part of that country. Now, 2 of them were killed in a roadside bomb attack, one in apparently a non-combat incident, and the other was shot and killed by an Afghan man in police uniform. The latest deaths bring to at least 340 the number of NATO forces killed so far this year. The foreign troop casualties have risen steadily since the U.S. and its allies invaded that country back in 2001. Israel has given final approval for the construction of 900 settlement units in the East Jerusalem Al-Quds. Israeli officials say the new housing units were approved 2 years ago and will be built in the Har Homa neighborhood. Israel's refusal to halt settlement activities on occupied Palestinian land stopped the talks with the Palestinian Authority since last year. The talks collapsed after Tel Aviv refused to extend its 10-month partial freeze on settlement construction that expired in September 2010. Meanwhile, Chief Palestinian Authority's negotiator has brushed off Israeli attempts to stop the authority from pressing ahead with its UN membership bid in September. Saeb Erekat says Israeli advances for a fresh round of talks are merely a public relations exercise. Several international activists who had been stranded at the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing for a week, well, they were eventually allowed to enter the Gaza Strip by Egyptian authorities. The activists have brought with them the medical aid. However, some parts of the convoy were not allowed in. Scottish activist Hassan Nawara joins us now live from Gaza to tell us about the ordeal that he and other activists traveling with him experienced. Well, tell us about the observation, now that you're inside the Gaza Strip, of the humanitarian situation on the ground there.
The situation is really very bad. I was really shocked to see the medical level and the status in Gaza. It is really very bad. Today, prior to this meeting, I was in the Ministry of Health warehouse where they keep their medications. Believe me, there is a huge amount of shelves are empty. They needed badly aid. A huge amount of medicine, different type of medicine are needed badly. Shelves are totally empty. Yesterday, we went to visit Khan Yunis Hospital, the Hospital Dar es Salaam. I was shocked to the level of the condition, and the medical equipment they use are badly deteriorated, out of date. 90% of these medical equipment are totally unused, unfunctional. They are a bit like cosmetics are sitting in their wards. The operation rooms, I have seen 2-3 patients waiting to go inside the for operations. and I was really petrified. Is these people going to survive the operation or not, because of the lack of medical equipment they needed there.
Significant progress has reportedly been achieved in negotiations between striking doctors and the Treasury, but sanctions in the longest medical crisis in the nation's history are ongoing until a comprehensive agreement is reached. This as 1,000 residents handed in letters of resignation. More on health and other social protests in this report from IBA's Aaron Viner.
The nation's medical personnel today marked 137 days since the imposition of work sanctions. Saying that most of the demands for improved working conditions have now been met, the chairman of the Israel Medical Association, Dr. Leonid Edelman, ended his one-man hunger strike after 11 days, but said that the sanctions will continue until now intensified negotiations will settle unresolved issues. Medical residents today repeated their intention to resign en masse in 1 month's time if the proposed compromise fails to meet their demands. What has been agreed upon? 1,000 new jobs for doctors at public hospitals, 26-hour work shifts will be limited to 6 per month, and the number of residents will rise over the next 2 years, while a February agreement to expand the number of hospital beds, along with equipment and staff for patient care, will begin immediately. 300,000 shekels have reportedly been earmarked for doctors who agree to work in the peripheral areas. The major sticking point appears to be the doctor's requirement of receiving an hourly pay rate of 50 shekels, roughly equivalent to $14. No mention was made of the Treasury's demand, already rejected by the IMA, that doctors start punching time clocks. Netanyahu was praised by Finance Minister Yuval Steinitz for his intervention in the crisis after he visited Edelman on Tuesday. The Prime Minister congratulated the IMA chief in a telephone call last night and said that the parties are now on the right track and that the gap between them will be narrowed so the strike can soon be ended. Meanwhile, several members of Knesset, including Minister of Social Welfare Moshe Kahlon, today voiced support for protests against property costs, which continued in defiance of yesterday's passing of the Prime Minister's bill to tackle the housing crisis.
I totally sympathize with this movement of the young people to alter the political structure that will be more honest, more serious, and take care of the middle class that essentially, like in America, like in Europe, is smashed by at times corrupt politicians and by the fact that the new form of capitalism neglected essentially what is a fair economy and just society.
Residents remain at tent encampments throughout the country and vow to hold another mass demonstration in Tel Aviv's Hatikva neighborhood Saturday night.
Is not listening to the people, and we're here to show them that the people have power again.
The nation's taxi drivers today entered the fray, with hundreds blocking the main Tel Aviv-Azrieli junction before traveling at a snail's pace to rally at the city's exhibition center in protest that the recent government suspension of petrol taxation did not include diesel fuel. The country's dairy farmers today demonstrated against a new directive meant to pacify public outcry over the cost of cheese and other items by increasing imports from abroad. To protest the expected cabinet vote to lower the price of raw milk this coming Sunday, farmers today dumped liters of the dairy product in the street. Toward ending the continued social unrest, sources close to the Prime Minister today promised that a team of economic experts and ministers will begin holding dialogue with representatives of all the striking sectors by next week. They also vow that Netanyahu will unveil a revolutionary plan by autumn that will change the face of the nation by reducing indirect taxation and dismantling business monopolies. Further legislation will be enacted until late fall in any case. Despite calls to cancel its summer recess, the Knesset is now on vacation until the end of October. This is Aaron Viner for IBA News.
Arab countries agreed to support the Palestinian bid for full United Nations membership of a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders.
Palestinians reaffirmed their determination to go to the United Nations and submit an application for a full membership for a Palestinian state. They rejected Israel's call for resuming negotiations. After the Arab Follow-up Committee convened a meeting in Qatar, The chief negotiator and head of the Palestinian delegation, Saeb Erekat, announced that a consensus was reached on a comprehensive Arab action plan to continue gaining support for the application by working with member countries in the UN General Assembly and Security Council. He said that the action plan includes a series of phone calls, visits, and consultations with member countries, geopolitical groups, and international and regional organizations.
Our request for permanent UN membership for a Palestinian state with 1967 borders where the capital is Jerusalem does not aim to incite any kind of confrontation or conflict, but is only to maintain the option of two states and to preserve the peace process.
Our honorable brothers, we hope that the countries in the world that love peace and wish to achieve justice and democracy, and the people who seek liberation and their legitimate rights, will support the Palestinian people's requests and endeavors to establish an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital.
The UN request represents the only leading path and the only legitimate path.
A
consensus was also reached about convening a meeting for the Arab Follow-Up Committee in the second week of September to follow up on the developments and take further steps on the matter.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.